Good morning, artists, and welcome to Art Adventures Live. I am Mr. Andy, the studio programs manager here at Joslyn Art Museum, which means I get to make art with people like you that come and visit our museum. Art Adventures is a drop-in art experience that is free for museum members. It happens every Friday morning here at Joslyn throughout the year. In this time of COVID, of course, though, we are keeping each other safe by staying at home. So I'll be bringing Art Adventures to you each week so we can make art together in the comfort of your home. For a full list of upcoming art adventures and weekly material lists, please visit joslyn.org. If you don't have materials ready today, a recording of today's video will be posted along with a Pinterest board about today's artists and artworks. So you can visit that, take a look at that video and make art when you have your materials ready to go. Each week we are going to be inspired by a different artist or artworks from Joslyn's galleries and create our own masterpiece while learning how these artworks were made and what makes them so special. This week, we are going to be inspired by one of the largest artworks within our in Joslyn's collection, and that is the building itself. We'll get to know about the people that built and designed this giant pink building and look closely at the decorative panels that are carved into the marble at the top of each corner before we create relief panels of our own using thin foam sheets. Joslyn Art Museum as we know it today, we call this building Joslyn Art Museum, was opened as a gift to the people of Omaha almost 90 years ago in 1931. This is a picture from 1932. When it was opened, it was originally called the Joslyn Memorial, and was a special gift of a special project of the recently widowed Sarah Joslyn. Here's a picture of lovely Sarah Joslyn. Sarah Joslyn built this museum to honor her beloved husband George Joslyn, and here's George. From the start of the planning and even during the construction of this gift to Omaha, the building saw several changes in both its function and design. George Joslyn was the wealthiest man in Nebraska at the time of his death. He made his fortune from the newspaper business during the time of Omaha's growth from a frontier town into an industrial city and the home of the Union Pacific Railroad. The building was a gift to say thank you to the city of Omaha that had afforded the couple their wealth and was to be a sign of their love for the arts as well as Sarah's love for Joslyn. Originally, Sarah's plan for the museum was to be a large concert hall with a giant pipe organ for daily musical performances, free musical performances for the people of Omaha. The couple had a small organ and even a ballroom at their home at Joslyn Castle. As plans were being drawn up for the construction of the giant public concert hall, the idea for that building changed to include long hallway galleries to exhibit paintings and sculptures that led towards the concert hall on either side of a spacious fountain court. Some of you have probably been in our fountain court. This change for the building to be a place for the visual art, as well as in addition to the performative arts, was possibly due to the persuading of the lead architects for the project, the father and son team of John and Alan McDonald. This suggestion, though, this is Alan here, the younger son of that father-son team. The suggestion to include the visual arts didn't take much persuading of Sarah Joslyn here, because she and George were great lovers and supporters of visual art, and she wanted the building to appeal and welcome as many people of Omaha as possible. So why not lovers of paintings as well as lovers of music? And at the time, only the library had public gallery space devoted to works of art. So the McDonald's original architectural design for this building, the museum, like most designs for state buildings and museums at the time, drew inspiration from classical European architecture, European designs, and Greco-Roman columns like you might see in Washington, D.C., or even in the ancient ancient ruins. This plan, this classical plan, was changed at the last minute, was actually changed at the last minute. After the ground had already been dug up for the footings and the building was beginning to take shape, the McDonalds were so inspired by the construction happening at Nebraska's state capitol that they threw out their plans full of all that old Renaissance and ancient Greek stuff to look for a entirely new moderne style that incorporated new ideas of industrialism, cubism, and Art Deco design. The McDonalds brought in a young architect, this guy here, named Herschel Ellerth, to transform their stuffy old building held up with the Corinthian and scrolling iconic columns into the Art Deco jewel that Joslyn would become. Ellerth stripped away much of the decorative flourishes of the original design, replacing the scrolls at the top of the tall columns with a stylized Thunderbird motif, an attempt to merge modernist style with the influence of the Native American people. Ellerth gave the outside walls of the building an inward slant. So when you look at the building, might notice that the walls slant slightly inward, similar to the geometry of ancient Egypt. The finished design left empty spaces at the corner of each outward wall for decorative panels that were meant to further connect the building to its place here on Nebraska's plains through relief sculptures designed by a young sculptor named John David Burchen. The panels created by John David Burchen would become the high point of this artist's career, as sadly, his Art Deco style would quickly lose favor for the more emotionally fueled modes of artistic expression. But the straight-faced and strong stoic figures, like the figures in this panel here, fit perfectly within the museum's new modern architectural design. But even these seemingly perfectly placed panels would go through many, many changes before they were carved into the Georgia pink marble of the building's facade. John David Burchen had big plans when he was commissioned to execute these designs for the Joslyn Memorial. Not only did he plan to design 8 carved relief panels that told the story of Nebraska as you turned each corner of the building. They were here at the top of each corner of the original memorial building. He also planned a huge frieze honoring all of the creative arts. This was to be a long relief sculpture that spanned the entryway and held up by the columns at the top of the staircase. Not only that, he also planned to create, his original plan included 2 huge sculptures of riders on horses, a Pony Express rider on one side and a Native American warrior on the other. A professor from University of Nebraska named Hartley Burr Alexander had spent much of his career researching and learning and documenting and writing about Nebraska's history, including the history and cultures of Native American tribes living on the plains at the time of the homesteaders' intrusion in Americans' western expansion. This very knowledgeable professor from UNL was asked to help guide John David Burchen's artistic designs. And after only a quick look at some of Burchen's sketches and ideas for the relief panels and the equestrian sculptures, Mr. Alexander was quick to correct many cultural inaccuracies within the designs of the Native American people, as well as to point out that nobody wants to look at the underside of a horse as they enter a museum. So many of John David Burchen's plans were changed or thrown out altogether. Nowadays, though, so the horse was never realized when the building was open, but nowadays you can see that warrior cast from bronze when you walk up from the museum's parking lot. After after a lot of letter writing and arguing, eventual understanding, John David Burchen's designs were altered to better represent the tribes of the Missouri Valley, within stylized scenes depicting Art Deco interpretations of sacred ceremonies, along scenes of homesteaders, the construction of cities, and the relentless expansion of America into the West, including newspapers, radio, and everything that would follow. Once a pencil drawing for a panel design was finally approved by Mr. Alexander, Burchell would carefully sculpt each panel at life size. So here we can see John David Burchell standing next to a carved panel made from soft clay. Burchell would carve deep recesses to create areas of shadow and depth, carefully placing each figure within the panel to create a pictorial narrative or a story with a sense of space and movement. These clay relief sculptures were then cast in plaster and given to stone carvers to cut into the pink marble. This panel, one of my favorite panels, called the Buffalo Hunt, stacks repeated figures. We can see these figures over here, the hunters. Stacks those figures on top of one another, and we can also see this buffalo stacked on top of another buffalo to give a sense or represent a whole herd of buffalo or bison and a large hunting party. This panel, the smoke signal, shows 3 riders here in the distance. 3 riders that are approaching as these scouts give notice, and the figures grab their weapons to prepare for a fight. Today, each of you, we together, are going to make our own small relief panels not by carving into clay or chipping away at stone, but by cutting and building layers of stylized shapes cut from foam sheets. And you can choose to tell a story or a pictorial narrative about yourself. And we'll learn to create some movement, depth, and space. So before we begin, let's grab our material bags and make sure we have what we need to create our miniature relief panel. Remember, a material bag is available for those that need them. Every Thursday, throughout the day, you can come down to the museum, walk past the warrior sculpture, and up to our atrium entrance, and you'll find a bag with everything that you need for our June art adventures. Today, what we will need in my bag is a pair of scissors to cut our foam sheets. There's a black crayon that might be useful when we're drawing our designs. And most importantly, should have a half sheet of foam, like this, a small rectangle, and a large sheet of foam that is white on the back. Our rectangle will be the same color on both sides. This large sheet of foam is white on the back. This sheet of foam is actually a sticker. Don't peel it off yet, but this back will peel off, and we'll be able to design our shapes and cut those shapes from this sticker foam and stick them on to our smaller sheet of foam to build up our relief panel. If your foam, like mine, was kind of curled up, we can uncurl that foam by flipping it over, rolling it the opposite direction, using your hand like an iron, and smooth that out. And that's all we need today. Scissors, something to draw with perhaps, our half sheet of foam, and a full sheet of our sticker foam. And then now all we need to do is decide what kind of narrative do you want to tell. So you might think about a story or a memory about yourself, or maybe a story that you've heard, maybe a legend, maybe a fable. I'm thinking of a fable that I might create a narrative of the tortoise and the hare. A fable about a hare that raced a tortoise, a very fast hare who lost the race to a very slow tortoise. So I'm going to think about, I might draw on some sketch paper. I could even draw my design, sketch out several designs like John David Burchell would draw his designs to show to Mr. Alexander. And once I choose a design that I'm fond of, a design that I want to pursue, a design that I want to realize out of foam for our relief panel, Then I'm going to begin to think about the different shapes that I need to cut from this large piece of sticky back foam. And I think a good place to begin from my narrative is to create some space. So I'm going to think of this small rectangle as my background. And before I begin to put in some of my details, I'm going to create a space for my details to live. So the details I know I'll need will be my tortoise, the hare, maybe some trees or rocks along the race path, and but we need a place for all those things to live. So I'm going to think about my second layer of my relief, and our relief is going to build up different layers to create shadows, almost like the carved relief sculptures on the corners of our building. I'm going to create my middle ground will be my second layer. So this is my background, the things that are far away perhaps. And to do this, I might hold this up next to my smaller sheet of foam. And I'm going to draw a horizon line. The horizon line is where the earth meets the sky, where the blue sky meets that green earth. And so I'm going to think about where this race is taking place. Probably someplace where it's maybe a little hilly, but not too many mountains or things. And I'm just going to make a line like that. And I'm going to cut this out. I drew that line. I measured this first down here. I carefully lined up the bottom of each of my foam. And I started my line to allow for the top part of my background to allow some sky. So when I cut this down, I'll be able to peel off my stickers and line up the bottom of these two pieces. And I'll show you it in just a second. Sometimes it's good to watch me and listen to me figure out how to tell you how to do this. And then you can do it yourself, okay? Because your horizon line will be different. And I hope you make your own choices. So what I can do now is I can set that piece on top of my smaller rectangle, my background, set my middle ground on top of it, and now I can imagine this top section being as the sky. So I'm going to line it up, make sure that I have it just the way it fits together just the way I want it. And now is the exciting time to carefully peel the back of your sticker foam. And this is pretty sticky stuff. So once we stick it down, it might not be too easy to peel it away. So I'm going to carefully line up my corners. If they're not just right, that's okay. And stick on, now I have my background, which might be the sky or the things that are further away, my middle ground. And then I can even maybe next I might create a foreground. So I'm going to come down here. I'm going to go to this other straight edge on my foam sheet. And I'm going to think about what might be closest to me if I was watching the scene of this race. And I can draw, maybe there's a bush, this time I might draw a jagged line like this. And carefully cut. Now, I hope you're coming up with stories of your own. You could tell a story about yourself or a special memory. You could, or you could you could create a relief panel full of all the different things you enjoy. Some of those things that you're excited about, the things that make you special. It could be a personal panel, a personal relief panel. I'm going to challenge myself to tell a story, a narrative. Since John David Burchen's, each of those panels use symbols and stylized images. When I'm cutting out this bush, I'm not worried about all the little leaves. I'm creating a stylized shape. Stylized shape. So I'm thinking about the different lines and the shapes that I see when I look at a bush. But I'm going to create that bush in my own style. I'm going to simplify that bush to leave out all the little details. So I don't need to worry about drawing or cutting all those little leaves. I'm going to imagine this as a flat piece of stone that has been carved with a zigzag edge to create a stylized bush that I can carefully peel off the back and place down here on this corner. Now I might add more things to my background, my middle ground, my background, my middle ground, and my foreground as we go along. But let's continue to go along because I still have to put some information in here to help tell my story. So now I'm looking, and I think what I might need now, before I put in that rascally rabbit and that slow hare, I'm gonna create a shape that might represent the racetrack or the trail that these two critters are racing on. And I'm sketching it out. You might use a pencil, and I can maybe I can put my piece of foam up here and kind of check it out. And when I start to cut this out, I can alter it too. But look, this is my stylized shape. I'm imagining a road this is a long race. So this road is going to go way off into the background. So I wanted my road to maybe line up right to the horizon line. So it looks like this tortoise and that hare have been running for a long time. And it swoops around and gets a little larger as things do when they approach, as they get closer to you. And in our picture, they enter the foreground. Those things in the background, things that are furthest away, those things that we choose to put back near our horizon line, they're going to be teeny tiny. And this is a trick that artists use to create an illusion or to imply some deep space. Even though our relief sculptures are kind of shallow and they're contained within this small rectangle, we can create an illusion of space by putting some of those things way off in the distance. And we're imagining right now, we're all using I'm using all these different colors of green. When you come and visit the museum, our panels are all pink because our marble is pink. I'm going to imagine that this is a green stone sculpture, stone that we're carving our relief into. So I don't need to worry about different colors that I might need. If you're worried about that, if you're making an apple tree and you don't have any red for your apples, don't sweat it. We're just worried about creating those simple shapes. You dig? So I think that looks pretty good. That's where my road's going to go. And that creates this sense of, already starting to create a sense of movement in space. I'm going to stick, you know what? I think I decided I want to do something else. I'm going to carefully peel up. I think I want this road to be a little closer to this bush. And in fact, this bush is in the foreground, so I can further enhance that illusion of space by sticking that bush right on top of that road. And that's going to start to build up some of our shadows. All right, now I could put on all kinds of details in here, and I hope you will put all kinds of details in your picture. But I think we're ready for that turtle. We're gonna put the old turtle dude, guy, person. Never really heard the gender of that turtle. It could be any gender turtle. I'm gonna draw a simple turtle shape. I'm not worried. I'm not going to draw I'm not going to draw the turtle eyeballs or the pattern on the turtle's shell. But I do want to draw the turtle's legs, I think. I'm going to simplify this turtle. We're simplifying and stylizing this turtle, and then if I want to, I can cut out some shapes. I think I will do that. Cut out some shapes and place those shapes onto this turtle shell to create a shell-like pattern or texture. But we want to think like a sculptor. So instead of drawing all of these details, we have to think of how we're going to build our relief by putting shapes on top of shapes. And if we were making this sculpture like John David Burchen, we would carve from those shapes from clay. And then that clay would be cast, which means it would be reproduced in a lightweight plaster. And then the heavy work started with the workers. The stone workers would then have to cut the design into the clay with their sharp tools. So there's our tortoise approaching this finish line. Before I pull off the sticker, I can figure out where's the best place for this here tortoise. And I think maybe that's the best place for that there tortoise. So I'm going to remove the paper so we can stick. And then I think I can keep adding more and more details. I can maybe even think about putting some clouds in the sky. But let's make sure we get a rabbit in there. I think I would maybe continue to add trees. I could create a tree that comes all the way up here to kind of create a frame around the top. In fact, that might be and some of these are just my scraps. That scraps gives me an idea. That could be a top of a tree if I add a tree trunk. I could put that up there later on. But I don't want to keep you all day. And I definitely want to keep our camera person all day, Miss Jennifer. So let's add a rabbit and then take one last look and make sure each of you has all the tools you need to continue with your own ideas. So this rabbit, I'm going to make this rabbit smaller because he's losing the race. He's way off here in the distance. And I want to make this rabbit, I'm going to try to think about how can I make that rabbit look like he's really sprinting, hopping super fast to try to catch up with that tortoise, that slow and steady tortoise. So no, I'm not going to draw the bunny eyes. Don't need to draw the bunny whiskers or all the bunny fur. But I drew a simple, small rabbit shape with some bunny ears for sure. And I tried to make this bunny create some movement by using lots of diagonal lines. I see some diagonal lines in the bunny legs as they stretch out. The bunny arm is reaching forward. Try to run as fast as that bunny can. And the bunny's back and ears are all stretched at a diagonal. Now, these little tiny shapes can be a little tricky to cut. Now watch when I cut. Remember when we cut, I like to put my foam all the way in the back of my scissors, the mouth of my scissors. And when I get to a corner or a nook or a cranny, instead of moving my scissors around a lot, I'll kind of turn my foam when I get to this tail. Turn my foam around just like that and try to follow that line. And you know what? If that's not the bunny I want to keep, look at all this foam. I can continue to cut out bunnies until I get the right bunny I need. All right, that's a good little bunny, I think. Look at that little fast bunny running. Here we go. Where this little fast bunny so fast I can't keep this bunny on camera, but not fast enough to run the race. You were too confident, Mr. Bunny. You're way back there. Now, real quick, we're gonna do a lightning mode real quick, because that's a good start. But I want to think about other things I can do to add some interest and and look at this great line here. That's a great tree trunk line. I can freestyle this to make a tree trunk of this here tree. Maybe take a bite out of here and a bite out of here. Ooh, that's okay. Got a saw. If I make a cut I'm not fond of, roll with it. I like that. Now we have some branches for that tree to hold up the leaves of that tree. Come here, sticker. Maybe you have fingernails better than mine. And again, I can carefully maybe peel back, I think, to create some space to put that underneath. And we can build up. Maybe I'll cut out some leafy textures, some leafy shapes. Now I'm just freestyling, creating some simplified, stylized shapes to make the top of this tree look a bit leafy. So once I start to get in some of these big shapes, then we can kind of think about what other information can we put on there. and build up shapes on top of shapes. See how high of relief you can get. And as we put more shapes on top of other shapes, I'll save that shape, we'll start to notice some different shadows. And those shadows, when you come and visit, and you can come visit our relief sculptures and everything outside of the museum anytime, even during this time of COVID. Our sculpture gardens are open. When you come and visit those shadows, those deeply carved shadows, and the hard edges around those shapes, makes it easy for us to read or look at that sculpture and see exactly what's happening from way down here on the ground. And when you come to the museum next, take a walk all the way around the museum and look at each of the 8 panels and try to see if you can read the different stories in each one. Thanks for making art with me today. Remember, I'll be here every week with you during this time of COVID and coronavirus. So join us back here next Friday at 10:30 for another Art Adventures. In the meantime, be sure to go to Joslyn's website to find out about all of our Art from Afar virtual experiences, including virtual art camps, which are happening right now, and new camps have been listed for all of July. And until next week, keep making art, and I'll see you again. Adios, artists.